Here we go, guys. Here, take it away, Skip. I'm muting.
All righty. How's everybody doing? Okay, hang on. Let's do this properly, shall we? So, this is the new normal. Somebody has a great idea. In this case, it was Hillel. And 2 days later, we have an international panel of experts recording a panel discussion about a really salient topic. It's not a horrible outcome, even if the way we got here is quite horrific. And now that we're getting used to whatever version of social distancing or lockdown you happen to be under, wherever you happen to be, we probably ought to get back to our day jobs. So I'm a marketer. My question is, how should I be doing email marketing in the era of the coronavirus? So to help us answer that question, we've assembled this esteemed panel of designers, strategists, and copywriters. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because that would probably be easiest. So, hello, take it away.
Okay, so I'm Hillel Berg. I'm a email coder. I wouldn't call myself a designer. I use designers, but I could do decent work on my own. And on my own, basically everything I do is email and think about email and talk about email. And so I'm glad to be part of this. I'm glad to have organized this. And I'm based in Israel, which makes me a little more interesting, maybe. But yeah, do you want to react to that?
I don't know that it makes you more or less interesting. Just a fact.
Yeah,
Everybody's got to be from somewhere.
right. That's true. Yeah, but that's more or less my story. And
Cool.
yeah,
Thank you,
for sure.
Julian. How about you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm just going to be a bit quiet because I've got other people sleeping on different sides of my office. It's late. It's 1 a.m. here. I'm Jules from Australia, and I really love to tell stories in side of emails, and specifically, I really help out mainly entrepreneurs fix up their email marketing strategies so they can use stories to emotionally connect and to sell. So basically, I'm a freelance copywriter.
Fantastic, and so cool for you to join us at this odd hour, and hopefully nobody wakes up. Elliot.
Hey, yeah. So I'm Elliot Ross. I'm the CEO for Taxi for Email and also managing director for Action Rocket. So the last 2 weeks has been pretty interesting as we've been working with our clients and customers to help them find a new normal as well as work out what we're doing.
Fantastic. Emily, I think you're in Detroit, right?
Yeah, I'm just outside of Detroit, Michigan in the US, in Ann Arbor. And I own Flourish and Grit, an email marketing and automation studio. So I do strategy, copywriting, and design. And my sweet spot is automation. So I love building those funnels. It's a good time for me.
Fantastic. And I assume that's not your curtain that we could hear in the background. What's the cat's name?
Oh, Rocky. Yes.
Rocky the cat.
Every time I get on a call, he hears me and has to get cuddles.
Exactly. Has to get involved. Well, we
Yes.
may get a visit from Rufus the cat from London later.
Perfect.
Excellent. And Jennifer, last but certainly not least.
Hi. Thank you all again so much for having me. I'm Jennifer Cannon. I'm currently a senior editor for Marketing Land and MarTech Today, which is also associated with Search Engine Land. So I cover email marketing, deliverability, all the different aspects of email. Also touch upon marketing operations and marketing technology as a whole. Prior to becoming a writer, I kind of made a career change, and I actually spent about 12 years as an email marketer, starting in during the recession, which was a wonderful time. When everybody was telling me that email was dead and social was next, I stuck with email and had the fortunate opportunities to work with National Hockey League teams. I should say ice hockey for those of you who aren't from the US or maybe the Midwest and are hockey fans.
I like to call it proper hockey, but I get yelled at by my English English friends when I do that.
Ice hockey. So I've worked for 3 NHL franchises and advising them on their email marketing strategies. I took a break from being on the brand side and I went over to work for Salesforce as part of the exact target acquisition. So I worked with clients all over the world, working through different email strategies and different ways to use Salesforce in their platform. So I have experience on the technical side as a vendor. And then I did return to the brand side finally to work for the Boston Bruins, which is my hometown, my home team. You can take the girl out of Boston, you can't take Boston out of the girl. So that's where I am now, and just really glad that we're doing this. And I think that this is going to be really great to share with our audiences.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And well, I would say go Bruins, but obviously with the season being over, I'm not sure that might just be too hurtful.
Yeah.
And I'm Skip Fedora. I'm a speaker and an author, but most importantly, probably for this discussion, I'm also the CMO of the Overmore Group, where I'm responsible for all the marketing for our Lola Grove, Lead Scale, and All Groove brands. So I'm basically here to get all the advice first before we ship it out to the rest of our audiences. So we were having a bit of a chat before we started recording, and this is kind of just for everybody. But basically, how's everybody getting on? How y'all doing? How y'all adjusting? Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Well, I will share that today is my first day back at work. I spent I worked last Monday, but I spent 8 days with a fever last week and had a lot of symptoms of what is going around. Unfortunately, the testing here in the United States isn't very easily accessible, so I can't say for sure whether my husband and I had it. I was quarantined in my own house because I work remotely, so I work from home. But he's an essential employee, so he was coming and going. So the transmission is, we weren't tested, so we can't say for sure. But it was one of the sickest that I've ever been in my life, and I feel quite tired, but I'm hopeful and stayed positive throughout. And I mean, it was tough, but we got through it. So you asked me first, and sorry that we had to go there, but
no, that's all right. Well, first off, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Elliot, how are you and the troops getting on?
Yeah, it's all right. It's good. So I mean, my wife is a stay-at-home mum anyway, so we've got 2 kids, and she has been a trooper looking after the kids while I'm trying to do my job. So yeah, it's hard, especially because they're cooped up all day. So trying to work from home and make sure the kids are all good, and also they're more antsy than usual because they can't go out as much. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And then on the other side, so obviously there's sort of 2 businesses that I work with and run, and everyone, it feels like that first week, maybe sort of spilling into the second week, everyone was just kind of trying to work out what was going on, like how to set up their own workspace and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of back and forth and making sure everyone's got what they need and doing Amazon orders and stuff like that. But now people seem to have got the hang of it. So, we're all getting through it on the agency and the company side, which is cool.
Cool. Emily, are you finding the same thing? It stopped, everything sort of stopped or slowed down and then could ramp back up again, or?
Yeah, I have, I had leads dropping like flies, right? Because people are adjusting their marketing strategies and their spend. So everybody's trying to figure out what to do next. And then also just there are people who are using this time to strategize and then decide email is where they want to invest too. So it's really been a roller coaster of an influx of business interest. And then I have a couple small business clients who've had to close doors. So there's that too. But I'm also in the same boat. I've got, as Ellie, I've got a kid at home, got a toddler. Luckily, I only have one. So he's relatively manageable. And my husband also works, he works at a tech company. So he's able to work from home. But he's in e-learning. So that industry has been booming right now too. So things have been quite hectic. So yeah, just getting used to the new normal, trying to get some sunshine and not go crazy
Yeah,
inside.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you know how it is.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I don't know about sunshine. I live in London, but the biggest adjustment that we've had was when my daughter started doing school from home. All of her classes are done on Google Hangouts, and the bandwidth at our house just couldn't handle it. So we had to sit down and put together this. We had a family meeting. We had to put together a calendar of the week. Who's got meetings when? Who's got class when? And try to limit it to only 2 people being online at any one time, just so we can make it work.
Yeah, that bandwidth has been a huge challenge.
Yeah. So Jules, what's it like in Australia?
Well, I'll start with something positive. So I actually went surfing this morning, and that's actually not very common. I moved cities right before the state borders closed because my girlfriend's here in South Australia, and I took all my stuff and I went a 10-hour drive there, and we're really close to the beach. There's not a lot of panic going on. We're all healthy, so that's really good. That's a good note. But like everyone else, I guess like the same. Like I've had 3 clients who had to stop. So I've had like a wedding planner, a registered training organization, and office RTO sort of organizers, and can't quite remember the other one, but like yeah, a few dropped off. And what I'm focusing now is more doing JV things with people I already know, instead of reaching out to colder prospects. But yeah, other than that, lifestyle, keeping healthy, exercising, that's really important right now.
Yeah, I've got a friend who lives in Perth, and she's been posting from the beach like every day, and it's a little sickening, really. And hello, what's the story in Israel?
So for me, I mean, the biggest pain was that one of my biggest clients is a travel client, travel packages and things like that. So and it was actually one of the more enjoyable emails to build because they're beautiful, because it's just beautiful pictures of everywhere. So, but yes, I lost him right away. He's like, stop all campaigns, stop all social media, we're done. But actually, he pivoted and now he's doing something else. So I'm back in business with him at least for this month. But the biggest change for me
Excellent.
was really working from home, like many people. I had an office in not 10 minutes from my house, where we just had a great office. It was an open floor kind of WeWork kind of place, and just had a great vibe, and it was very friendly. And I'd been there actually since January, so about like 2-3 months. And so just coming home, and then I'm working. Instead of like I had a Veridesk. I don't know if that's something that people know about. Veridesk is a desk that goes up and down, so you can stand up and
Oh,
sit
right.
down.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Gotcha.
yeah. So I had one of those there. I don't have that at home. I have a very small, like you went like this before. This is the size of my desk. So my desk's a little bigger than that, but it just barely fits 2 monitors. So I have my laptop like on the floor underneath my desk, and I try to work like that.
You do sort of look like you're sitting in a cupboard.
Oh, well, I'm working in the attic, and it's sort of like a playroom. So it's like there's toys
Okay.
everywhere and books everywhere. So I actually just pivoted. I actually have a guitar case on my lap, and there's a bathroom door behind me. So this is the
Nice.
safest. I have the windows facing me, so that's why I have good light. That was the whole thinking.
Perfect.
But really, I've been using this whole time. I've really been connecting a lot with different people and different businesses, and doing things like this just seems the most natural, best way to use this time and inform the world. So
Excellent. Let's get into the meat of this. And I guess I want to break this up into kind of 3 sections. The first one is around the new way of working, and how are you all managing your teams? How are your clients managing your teams? What are some cool ways that you've seen that work? Then we'll get into the marketing aspect. What you shouldn't be doing. And then I want to end with some positivity. So start thinking about what positive thing you think is going to come out of the backside of coronavirus in terms of how we do business, how we interact with each other, that kind of thing. Um, for those of you who have teams or are working directly with clients, that so much of what we've historically done has been managed by the bumping into, the quick chat in the hallway, the chat over the cup of tea in the kitchen or whatever it is. What are you guys doing proactively to manage your teams differently? Elliot, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we've definitely been sort of feeling our way through it. It's weird because we've kind of, I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've tried a few different things, and we've definitely had days where all you do is calls, and there's other days where no one's doing calls. So it's trying to work out that balance. So what we tend to do is we work in quite an agile way anyway. So we tend to have a sort of daily stand up where people discuss, like, here's the work I'm doing and that kind of stuff, and here are the blockers that I need someone else to help me with, and that kind of thing. So, from a work perspective, people were pretty good in terms of getting things done. There's not really been too much disruption to that. One thing that has been, I think, a bit of a challenge is that kind of social, like you said, the kind of not only kind of work conversations happening by passing each other on the way to the kitchen or something like that, but also just the social bit. Like Action Rocket and Taxi are 2 separate teams and 2 separate companies, and they don't see each other anymore, even though usually they're in the same sort of large office space. So what we've been trying to do is have some kind of social things, and I know that's a lot of kind of out of work social calls now, but we've been trying to have, like, I think last week we did a pub quiz, this week we're going to do bingo, and that kind of thing, just to get people sort of talking and working with each other, or interacting with each other outside of that kind of work environment, because it's so easy to just be sending text messages on Slack and that kind of thing. And there's a stat about text communication where is it like 80% of communication is non-verbal or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so the point is, if you're only conversing via Slack, you lose all of that kind of enunciation and the context of how people are talking. It's very easy to take things the wrong way. So trying to make sure that everyone is still having a bit of sort of face-to-face time, even if it's via a call, in a bit more of a fun sort of way, really just kind of helps with that, helping the work conversations happen as well, I suppose. I think that's been one of the biggest sort of adjustments, is making sure that sort of stuff happens, because it just happens naturally when you're in an office, so you don't need to think about it, and all of a sudden it's not happening anymore. The other kind of piece around that is that kind of, people are, especially in the UK, people are on somewhat a lockdown. It's not as enforced as in Italy or other places at the moment. But nevertheless, the recommendation is you don't go out the house unless you need to. So you're basically only seeing your housemates, which, depending on your situation, could be fairly lonely, all that kind of stuff. So just trying to look out for people's sort of mental health a bit as well has been an important thing to do.
Yeah, that's so important. Anybody else that heard some good examples of things that are not quite so work related, a bit more social? I like the pub quiz. That's a good idea.
Well, as an editorial team, we work remotely already, so not much has really changed in our day-to-day in terms of how we work together, which has been, we still had to make an adjustment, of course, with everyone else being home. But one thing that we have really had to think about is how we're going to do our conferences and seminars. And we actually had an event called Martech West that's scheduled for, it was mid-April in San Jose. And as the days started getting closer, we started realizing suddenly, wait a minute, we need to think about how we're going to be able to create events and create a safe space for people to not only learn, but connect with other people. And so within a couple of days, a group of women within our team, they created, it's they basically turned it into a digital version of the conference. So it'll be called the Discover Martech Theater. And they made the entire event free so that anybody can log in to watch it. So that's actually, just one example of something that we had to do in a quick way to, assume business as normal as much as we can, but with these restrictions on, public gatherings, and also trying to plan for how we make people safe when they're coming to these events, and, taking those types of things into consideration are going to be some very big adjustments for us. So right now, pulling off a virtual event is what we're able to do, but we're also kind of looking ahead, the next 6-9 months to what are events going to look like, and how do we, how do we make people feel safe?
Yeah, that's actually probably a whole separate discussion, the pivot to online events.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have done the exact same thing. And it seemed like there were a lot last week for some reason. I don't know why. This week there really doesn't seem to be that many at all. But that does lead on to another interesting question. Because, one of the things that I've noticed about attending an online event is, I as a speaker, I really miss having the audience to feel, to get a bit of buzz and energy off of, see how it's going. I miss bumping into people, seeing people, shaking their hands. Ooh. And so I've always been kind of opposed to online events, but I have a sneaking suspicion that is one thing that is going to come out of this, that we're going to start seeing a lot more of those things. But one of the things I've noticed in attending online events is they're a lot more tiring. You get tired quicker because staring at the screen, it seems like you have to stay really focused, and it's a lot harder concentration. For the rest of you, have you seen in your work, are people getting the work done faster because they're less distracted and more focused, or are they starting to burn out? Are they getting more tired? Is it, just the whole, I'm only looking at a screen all day? Is that what's that doing to people?
Well, I can speak from my experience and some of my clients as a parent. Myself, my husband are both working or attempting to work full time, and basically my work hours are cut in half because we're trying to juggle everything, and trying not to feel too guilty about all the TV time. But it's kind of nice too, because it's making me really focus on the hours I do have to work. It's like, okay, I don't have time for distractions on the internet. I don't have time to scroll the latest news, the terrifying news out there. So just like get really focused in. And a lot of my clients are also working parents, and they're experiencing the same things. And
have you had to change your process much?
Oh yeah. Well, mainly it's just being much more communicative, right, with my clients and any other contractors I work with, about, okay, here's the time slots I have available to talk. Here's how much time I can dedicate to this. And it's just everybody's just readjusting expectations about how fast things can get done. And if they want something done quickly, it's going to be done rather than perfect, right? Sometimes. And that's just the world we're living in right now.
That's an interesting point. I want to pass it over to Jules. So Jules, one of my absolute favorite writers is Aaron Sorkin, and heard a great interview with him when he was talking about the first season of The West Wing, and because of he was writing 2 shows at once, it was very much a case of it was done. It wasn't perfect. There wasn't a whole lot of time for rewrites. Has this changed your work process much?
I would say no. I don't have. I would say it's still the same. I don't have the team like everyone else has. But sorry I know you really had a really good question lined up. The answer is, short answer, it's still the same. Still got to hit deadlines, still got to do the research. Much of the work is online before this whole sort of thing happened. So that's kind of been a nice benefit.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't the answer I was going for, but that's fine. We can edit that one out. Cool. So anybody else want to chip in on anything around ways of working before we head into the marketing aspect? Okay. Right. So I guess the question is, should we be marketing at all? And I'll just open this to the floor. Spit out your feelings on this.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Like, maybe different. We shouldn't be doing the same marketing as before, but we should definitely be doing something, especially as people settle down and work out their new way of, how the world works and things like that. At the end of the day, the market still needs stuff. We have stuff to sell. Obviously, some companies don't, some do, and the world has changed. But in the big picture, there's still things that people need, and there's still people that have things to sell.
Yeah, and I think that the reaction of some company, so Coca-Cola has stopped doing all marketing in the UK. Now I guess maybe they can get away with that. People are still going to buy Coca-Cola, so they don't really have to do much marketing. But then you start to think about, what's the knock-on effect to the economy of that? So if Coke isn't buying ad space, does that mean, publishers and media outlets like Jennifer's are now going to start to struggle? And once they start to go away, it's it's a bit of a house of cards kind of thing. So Elliot, you mentioned maybe market a little bit differently, and I want to get to how we should maybe be changing our messaging and that in a second. Is everybody here familiar with the Brazilian McDonald's advert, where they basically took the golden arches and split it to represent social distancing?
Yes.
I did not see that.
It's Marmite, right? You either love it or you hate it. Some people have been like, "Oh, that's such a great idea," and other people have been, what's the point and why mess with your brand like that? Thoughts? For those of you who saw it, love it, hate it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not. I felt it was a little sort of. There's a phrase that you see on Twitter, and people talk about sort of sixth form poetry. It felt a little like that. Like it's a nice idea. It felt a little simplistic and maybe a little bit too opportunistic to my taste. But then I work in marketing and I see all this stuff all day, so I'm not the market as well.
Yeah, and not a big McDonald's fan. Essentially, I don't know. Actually,
I had my last McDonald's before I knew what was coming, and I went out and had a McDonald's. So I will admit that.
Well done. So obviously, what they were trying to do was reinforce the social distancing and help get the message across. And I agree with you. I thought it was an interesting idea, but kind of was pretty much always guaranteed to fall a little flat in his face. But then I'm not in the target market. But how should marketers be addressing, the elephant in the room, if you will, or the coronavirus? From my brand, it has impacted us as a company, but it has absolutely no bearing on what we do as a business. So should we ignore it? Should we just mention it briefly? Should we talk about how we're changing in light of it? What's the best way forward?
So I've been seeing a lot of, I've been hoarding these COVID-19 emails like crazy because I've just been seeing.
Is that in case you run out of toilet paper?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to print them off. No, so what I've been seeing is a lot of people are, a lot of the bigger brands are implementing these sort of these disaster preparedness plans, right? That are very templated and very, this is what we're doing, this is how we're protecting our employees. It's us, we. And with little consideration of the pain points their audience is experiencing right now. So it's now becoming noise, right? It's just inbox noise that people are sick of getting, sick of reading, sick of listening to, and also all the memes now of thanks so much for sending me an email when I haven't heard from your brand in 5 years, right? So it feels very disingenuous and is really turning people off. So what I've been recommending for people is, like, you don't have to name what's going on right now, but name the pain points that your audience is experiencing, right? Whether it's working, I mean, I'm just going to talk about me because I love talking about me, but like working parents, right? Who are trying to work from home, all the things they're trying to do with their kids. There are so many opportunities out there to talk to people about that particular pain point, right? But every audience, every business's audience is experiencing some sort of negative impact, and it might not be the virus itself, but it's constricting our lives and creating opportunities for brands to help, right? And so that's how I've been advising my clients, and how I've been writing content for my clients and for myself.
And Emily, if I can just piggyback off of that a little bit too, I think it's giving brands an opportunity to really be more human in their messaging and marketing. You know, I think some brands have been talking about that for years. Like, how do we have a more genuine connection with our customers? And this is going to start giving brands the opportunity to, you know, relate to their customers in a different way. You know, there's different messaging that they can include, but, you know, I think that we're going to see a big difference in how just copywriting and email is going to change, just to make sure that we're addressing those things. Like you said, there's working parents at home reading emails now. Maybe we should reconsider how we're sending our daily newsletters, you know, it's to have resources available for you and, you know, for our audience to understand. One thing that we've started doing in our own email newsletters is just including a mindfulness moment. And we just said, we're going to put these in our newsletters. It has nothing to do with MarTech or search engine land or marketing, but everyone needs to take a breath. And if you need one today, you know, our editor-in-chief came up with the idea and we all love it because, you know, just something like that is just, you know, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're not trying to be negative, but we're saying if you need to take a moment, here's a quick way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's also a bit of people wanting some normality, you know, and I think there's something to be said for not doing too much and just saying, hey, you know, we appreciate what's going on. There's definitely some kind of trigger words and things you want to avoid. Like this morning we were talking about some copywriting things, and one of the features in our tools is that you can lock down content. And we were like, oh no, actually you shouldn't say lockdown. Like that's not a word we should use. So, you know, these things do surface up. But I think one thing that I've seen, and it's outside of the realm of kind of email, but in general, the brand sort of piece is there's some brands and companies that haven't made themselves look good for various reasons. So there's sort of stories of billionaire airline owners asking for bailouts, and there's an example of another company arguing that they are an essential service and should stay open when they don't really. They sell fashion items and things like that. So that there's a bit of brand damage that's going on. So I think you do have to be very careful to make sure that you don't, you know, people are very sensitive to things at the moment, and making sure that you don't accidentally cause any challenges. But I think to the point of helping, I think there's some interesting stuff that has gone on. So I've got a couple of examples just to pull out from the UK. So there's a brand called Millie's Cookies, which is they're a sort of a little store, and a bit like Krispy Kreme donuts, I suppose, but for cookies. And you tend to get them at train stations and tube stations and places like that. And they have kind of pivoted, because no one really wants cookies. I suppose they do, but that walk-through market has gone. And they pivoted, and they are now doing grocery delivery. So you can buy a grocery box from them for whatever it is, £10-15, and they'll deliver it to you in 24 hours. So they're using that infrastructure they used to have for delivering cookies to offices, and they're now using the same sort of team and structure and all that kind of stuff to actually do something that is socially good, which I think is really interesting. Likewise, there's a company we use called Wallace Space, who, again, small company in London. They own a few different venues, and they do spaces for meetings and offsites and things like that. And obviously no one's going for an offsite right now, but what they have done is they've sent out a load of recipes, because one of the things that one of the differences that they use in sort of normal times is that when you go and use their space, you have a really nice meal. So their chefs have put together a load of recipes to send out in email and on their blog and things like that, to actually almost underline their brand values, even though you've got to cook them yourself. So hopefully the idea is, they're reinforcing what they're about, and then when things do get back to whatever the new normal is, you'll be sort of front of mind to use them for your office space. So there are some sort of subtle things that I think people are doing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whole pivot thing. The pub down the street from my house, it was, when it was clear that they were going to close the pubs on that Friday, the landlord called the council and said, do I need to fill out any paperwork to change my pub from a pub to a takeaway and a veg market? And they were like, no, I guess not. He's like, well, write this down, because I'm officially notifying you that I'm no longer a pub. I'm a takeaway and a veg market. And they made it work for about a week. And then it turned out that actually it would be better for their staff if they closed, because then they could access some government funds. But yeah, for that week, it was you'd order a takeaway, turn up at the pub door. If you took a pint glass with you, they'd fill it with beer, so you could take your pint home with you as well. It was a nice little system they had going on.
I'm here. Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in. Like, it is a very difficult tightrope, I think, that marketers are dealing with, because you don't want to seem totally tone deaf and seem that like you don't know what's going on and just send the same copy and the same everything. And at the same time, you don't want to seem ingenuine. So I think exactly what we're talking about right now is brands that are looking to help, because people are home, and and they might have, and especially parents with kids at home. If you could send any resources, I mean, if it's not even your it's your area of whatever you do, but if you can, if you could send something that helps, that's just what everyone wants and everyone wants to hear. And definitely listening to the pain points of your customers and clients, and thinking about how you can ease their pain in whatever way it can be. And like Jennifer was saying, like she had a client, for her own brand, that they're doing a mindful moment. Even before this whole thing started, that was a great idea, since we were all running like chickens. But just to, just finish it off, and it's just great, and hopefully we'll see some examples. But the examples Elliot gave, but when any brand just looks to pivot to help people, then that's a success.
Yeah, just to that point, I've got one more just to talk about really quickly, actually. So there's a brand, Marks and Spencer's, which you may have heard of in the UK, big kind of clothing store, but over sort of last decade or so, they've really gone into the food space. So they have supermarkets as well. Now, they sent an email that the subject line was actually, "Can I freeze it? Yes, you can." And it's an email, it's an informational email, and it's basically saying, here's stuff that you might have fresh, and here's whether you can freeze it or not. So it's informational and it's useful, right? Like, so it's saying, bread, that's good to freeze, these certain types, so I've got it open. So, bread rolls, pizzas, bagels, crumpets can all be easily frozen, other ones can't, whatever. That's really useful advice, right? On the most part, I did look this up on Twitter, and on the most part, people were like, that's a great email, it's really useful, I've learned some stuff, so it is really informational. But at the same time, there were a few people going, oh, they're just advocating buying a load of stuff so that you can freeze it. So I think the other thing to bear in mind is there will always be people who take things the wrong way in this day and age. Perhaps the tightrope is making sure that you don't have everyone take it the wrong way. But there will always be one person who finds a way to say something bad about whatever you do, especially on the internet.
I love that subject line. I wonder if because we've all been on video calls where people have frozen. I wonder if that was what they were going for or
true.
not. But Elliot said something, Jules, that I want to pick up with you about copy and word selection and, maybe talking about one of your features being able to lock something down is not a good thing to be promoting or highlighting right now. What should most email marketers, I think, still tend to write a lot of their own email copy. What kinds of things should they be looking out for?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I've been really listening to a lot of different people, and say the old version of, say, like aspirational language, so as painting the picture of your dream, for instance, the dream of maybe working by the beach, or going on a long vacation, like those dreams, like they're not foreseeable right now. And what people really want right now is connection and hope. So you're trying to use stories in a way that give people a light at the end of the tunnel. So for instance, if the person writing the copy is able to really empathize and say, like, this is the worst day I've ever had in my business, and they tell the story, but hey, I got out of it in doing this, and this. And that is sort of the hope and connection that they're going to be able to build with their audience, rather than, pitching this dream that might not actually really happen for who knows long.
Yeah, it's like how would you sell a car in this environment? How would you market a car? Because traditional automotive marketing is, the car out on the open road with the hair, wind blowing through your hair, and everybody looks beautiful. And that's a dream that right now is really just a dream.
Mazda is actually doing an interesting campaign in the US that is about touchless driving. And that's kind of the messaging that they're getting across there. I'll look for it and I'll try to find the ad for you.
That's interesting. I'd be interested to see what kind of backlash they're getting.
Yeah, I'll do a little research and get that for you.
The I guess the other question that I have is so I think we all agree, yes, we definitely should continue marketing, and we just need to think about how we treat the copy a little bit. But Emily, you mentioned one of the things you focus on is automation, and I can imagine that's an area of fraught right now, because a lot of people put those automation programs together as a kind of a fire and forget.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the e-commerce world, a lot of those campaigns are usually like birthday campaigns. Happy birthday, here's a coupon to our restaurant, things like that. Yeah, I've been urging people, and also with my clients, just going through all the automations and double checking things. Like I've got a client who has some brick and mortar locations, and it's been about 2 weeks. Michigan has been in the stay safe, stay home mode. So we had to go through everything and make sure nothing mentioned going to the store, right? Because there's messaging in those emails. So yeah, it's just revisiting all of those things, and how has your business changed, and how can people get more information or access to the services or products you offer right now. And unfortunately, it could change even more, right? So it's keeping an eye on those things to make sure they're not tone deaf, and you're getting the people the right information right now. And I've had I was in the middle of building out a funnel and writing it for a client that we had to totally scrap because it just was not appropriate anymore. So
not scrap, just put on the shelf until later, hopefully.
Right. And tweak. I got to use some of the copy from it, right? Okay. But yeah, okay. Put on the shelf. That's a positive spin. I like that.
Yeah. It's not, this will end. Hopefully this will end. We will come out of this.
Yeah.
What about being too lighthearted and getting it wrong. I mean, Elliot mentioned the Marks and Spencer example, and they were trying to do the right thing. And some people just get grumpy, and that's, people are just going to be grumpy. But has anybody, and I don't necessarily want you to name names if you're not comfortable with that, but has anybody seen any brands that have tried to use a Corona joke and gotten it horribly, horribly wrong?
Yep. There was on the back in the early days, I would say about January, there was on the radio, there was a bar, and they had a Corona night, and they were handing out masks and beers, and it was the talk of the town at that point. But that was an early jam before I got out of control. But at the time, I even thought, like, it's like bad. What was the saying? Like, any publicity is good publicity. And then as it's evolved, I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, clearly that's not applicable in this situation. That's as far as I've seen it. With advertisements, I think it's been pretty good from what I've seen, but I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to say.
Yeah, I think, to that, the point about the Marks and Spencer's email, that was, I think, about 2 weeks ago that they sent that now. So I wonder if they sent that this week, whether it would be received in the same, with the same tone or not. I think as counts go up and as the situation changes and things like that, definitely what worked last week might not work this week.
Right. No, there's no question. It's like a very, very, it's a path that's fraught with danger to try to do anything funny about Corona, because it's unfortunately a very scary situation, and, people are dying. So you have to be really, really careful to make any jokes. And it's just interesting, you mentioned Corona, the beer, because like you've seen, they haven't done anything. And I'm sure for that reason. Because, people have put stuff together, and there are a lot of jokes in it. A holiday here in February when people were giving out Coronas, or a cup of it. They weren't too generous. But yeah, just I haven't seen any everyone's done their own, and the WhatsApps are flowing all day with Corona jokes, but nothing from brands, which is probably the way it's gonna hopefully stay.
I'd be interested to see what their sales figures are. The day after the pubs closed here, at my local little local grocery store, up until that point, toilet paper had been gone, bread and eggs were unlikely to get those, but you could always get some kind of alcohol. The day after the pubs closed, the only thing they had on the shelves was 2 4-packs of Desperado beer and like 16 bottles of mulled wine that was on sale. That was clearly just something in the warehouse they wanted to get rid of. And they thought, well, the perfect opportunity. Right. So conscious of everybody's time, so let's kind of start thinking about wrapping this up. As I said, I wanted to end on a positive note. What do you think is the one innovation or the one trend or whatever that you definitely are going to hold on to when this is over? What's the one thing you're going to come out of this and say, you know what? Yeah, Corona was horrible, but look at this great unintended benefit or unexpected benefit. Hello, let's start with you.
Look, I'd say, I think before Corona world, I don't think this kind of thing was on anyone's mind. And I think because of Corona, now we're doing this and, having conferences like this and panel discussions, and I think it'll just keep growing. And I think that's a very positive development.
All right, Jules?
Yeah, I'm really blown away by how generous some bigger brands have been with just over delivering and trying to help people get through it. And I really feel like that sort of generosity is going to really help inspire other people to feel like if there are tough times, then they feel obliged to help give back. That's one of the big things I'm seeing right now.
Nice. That's a good one. Elliot?
Yeah, I'm going to say 2 because I'm going to be greedy. So one is the sort of bigger picture in society. There's a lot of things that used to happen that it seems like there's been a sort of a tacit admission that actually we were just playing games and that didn't matter. So like last week, miraculously, we were able to help homeless people find a hotel to sleep in, which we'd never been able to do before. Which, I mean, you sort of laugh about it, but that's a, why couldn't we just sort that out to begin with? It shouldn't have come to a pandemic like this to sort out big picture things like that. So I think, that there's a lot of wider society things that all of a sudden the issues that used to take up everyone's day discussing, there's been a sort of admission of, oh, actually, that didn't really matter. And I think there's someone in the UN said, oh, let's just put a ceasefire till all this is over. It's like, well, what's the point of having a war then? There's some big picture things that are going on there. And my other piece is just a tiny little example is, to Jennifer's point, really, I was at a conference just before this finished. It's sort of the last physical conference, I suppose, I was at for a while, in Atlanta, and they had a hygiene policy. So in the same way that you might have a code of conduct for a conference, and the hygiene policy, because sort of the virus was, it's on the horizon sort of thing, but it wasn't particularly commonplace, I suppose, at that point, at least, via testing and things. So they had a sort of a policy in place for, basically don't touch people. If you're ill, then go and, keep your distance and make sure you sneeze the right way and all that kind of stuff. So I think that kind of stuff, as we turn into, I don't think we're going to go back to what we were. There will probably be a new normal, and that new normal will probably pull through some of those things that we've learned. So yeah, I thought that's a little detail that we might see more of as we get back into the physical world.
That's an interesting one. Emily.
Yeah, so similar to what other people have been saying, I've just been loving how suddenly community-oriented people are, and that is becoming trendy, which I love. It's been a priority of mine for a long time, especially as a solopreneur. I work by myself, for myself, and I'm alone a lot of the time. And as you can tell, or maybe you've heard, my cat is not super talkative, does not give great feedback. Neither does my toddler. I'm working, and here's a fun game I've been doing is I've been writing up my toddler's performance review that's going to be coming up. He's a terrible coworker. So
I can
sit
see
down. Yeah, we're going to come up with some things he can work on to improve on for the next quarter, So the things you do to keep yourself sane, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I have several groups, solopreneur groups that I organize because it gets very lonely doing this thing, and a co-working meetup group, and we've been doing virtual hangouts, virtual co-working sessions that you just flip on your camera, you work, and if you need to pop your head up to say hi or ask a question or get feedback from something, it's super helpful, and you get all those cross-pollination because there are people from so many different industries can give you different perspectives. So we've been in co-working and happy hours, and I've just been, and people have been bringing other people in. So people are like, okay, loneliness is a real issue. It's an isolation, causes a lot of mental health issues. So how can we bring people together, not only in that way, but also, community service, and how can we help the people outside of our immediate networks?
Fantastic. Jennifer, what do you see coming out of this, the long-term societal change or benefit?
Just thinking from an event marketing kind of standpoint, and the way that, like we're all saying, how we are used to working with each other, and there will be a new normal. At least for this year, I can see there's, going to be a very big shift in how these conferences run. But I've also noticed that a lot of the conferences are opening up their content for free. So the accessibility to free content from large vendors, I believe, there might be one vendor who's having their free seminar today. That's a pretty big one.
Yeah, there is.
And they made it free for everybody. So anybody could attend. And that's pretty valuable. Those are, to attend that conference and all the expenses associated with that, to let people have the opportunity to do that from home. I think that's taking an extra step. It's helping us have something to focus on so that we are learning and continuing to learn through this. And, it's kind of helping us build that. But I'm really hopeful for just more, I guess, more shared and more accessibility to the types of content that we need. And, you know, instead of really making people go through gated processes and red tapes to find answers when working with vendors that they, you know, if they're having issues with, making those kinds of things more available for them. So just accessibility to information, and, you know, the thought leaders that are speaking at these conferences, like, we still need to hear those voices, and brands are finding ways, and event managers are finding ways to amplify that.
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much everything everybody said, so I'm not going to add anything of my own, other than you know, I think there will be quite a shift in the old school bosses that are like, oh, people can't work from home because if they work from home, they're not getting any work done. I mean, this is nip that right in the bud. With that, I'm going to say thank you to all of our panelists. I appreciate you all taking the time to chat with us today. And for those of you who are listening, thanks for taking the time to listen to this and spend some time with us today. Take care of yourselves, look after each other, and stay safe. Have a great day.